9 Most Brutal Punishments of the Wild West. We all know that the human capacity for inflicting pain on others has no limits. If you did not know this, then pick up a book, or better yet, turn on the news. Thankfully, the world has become a much more humane place over the past several decades, and I think that we can all agree that that is a great thing. After watching this list of 17 of the most terrible punishments in history, you will be super grateful that 2 minutes without TikTok on the bus is not the worst of your immediate problems. 1. The Brazen Bull. The Brazen Bull, sometimes known as the Sicilian Bull, was a bronze statue of a bull with a cavity large enough to fit a person inside. You know where this is going, don't you? Designed by the ancient Greeks on Sicily, the bull held the condemned prisoner locked inside as a fire was lit beneath it. The bronze bull would heat, and the unfortunate soul inside would be slowly roasted alive while screaming in agony. The bull was specially designed to amplify these screams and make them sound like the bellowing of a real bull. 2. The rack, one of the most famous torture devices to make the list. The rack was a very popular torture device made of a wooden rectangular frame. The limbs of the convicted would be attached to either end of the frame with chains, and with the help of pulleys and rollers, they would be stretched until they either became useless or were completely torn from the body. Originally used in antiquity, although we are unsure which civilization first conceived such a monstrous contraption, it was recorded that Alexander the Great used it. The rack gained popularity in Western Europe in the late Middle Ages, when it was first introduced to England in 1447, although the French added to the torment by sticking spikes to the rollers. 3. Crucifixion. Ah yes, the crucifixion. Just about everyone on the planet knows about this particularly cruel form of punishment. Jesus Christ was the most famous victim of crucifixion, but it was widely used throughout Roman times, and the 6,000 rebels of Spartacus's slave revolt, unlucky enough to not be killed in battle, were crucified along the Appian Way, a road spanning 200 kilometers. Although principally practiced in antiquity, this barbaric method of torture has, sadly, not yet been thrown in the trash heap of history. Several Islamic states still use crucifixion as a legitimate form of execution. It is a deliberately slow and excruciating execution where the condemned person is tied or nailed to a large wooden cross and left to hang until they die, which usually takes days. 4. Guillotine. Probably the most humane form of execution on this list, it was still very brutal. Although not actually invented by Jfmxnga guillotine, the guillotine has bore his name ever since he proposed the idea for a more humane and equal form of execution for revolutionary France. The contraption was used as the standard form of execution in France until the country abolished the death penalty in 1981. The last execution occurred in 1977. The guillotine was made of a razor-sharp blade attached to a rope which dropped onto the victim's head, severing it from their body. 5. Rat torture. If you have ever read George Orwell's novel, 1984, then you will be aware of the terrifying prospect of rat torture as the book's protagonist, Winston Smith, discovers when subjected to the terror of Room 101. If you have not read it, then I highly recommend it. Anyway, back to rat torture. This chilling torture technique involved a cage with one open side strapped to the victim's body, often the chest. The cage would then be filled with rats, and the metal cage would be heated. The rodent's natural instinct led them to flee the intense heat. Where could they possibly flee to? Through the condemned, of course. In order to escape, they would burrow through the victim's body with fatal results. 6. Breast ripper. Here's one for the ladies. Though women were subjected to much of the torture techniques found in this list, this one was designed specially for them. Used to cause major blood loss, the metal claws, which were often red hot, would be placed on the exposed breasts as the spikes penetrated beneath the skin. The claws were then tugged at, causing large chunks of flesh to come off with them. 7. Republican marriage. Another ingenious method of execution developed during the French Revolution. The Republican marriage was a little less humane than the guillotine. It involved binding a naked male and a naked female together and then throwing them into waters to drown. What happened when there was no river or lake nearby, I hear you ask? Well, the soldiers would just run the victims through with swords and bayonets. This was the preferred method used to execute priests and nuns. What a crime. 8. Spanish donkey. From revolutionary France to the Spanish Inquisition. The Spanish donkey may just be one of the most brutal punishments ever conceived by mankind. The victim sat astride, naked on a vertical wooden board with a sharp V-wedge on top of it. The torturer would then add varying weight to the victim's feet, allowing gravity to do what it does best, until finally the wedge sliced through the body. 9. Hanged, drawn, and quartered. The punishment for treason in medieval England was to be hanged, drawn, and quartered in public. Lasting for hundreds of years, as late as the 19th century, as a form of execution, thousands met their grisly end this way. The victim was tied to a wooden frame and dragged behind a horse to the place of execution. They would then be hanged by the neck for a short period of time until near death, hanged, followed by castration and disembowelment, where the entrails and genitalia were burned in front of the still-breathing victim. Drawn. The condemned would then be divided into 4 separate parts and beheaded. Quartered. One of the most famous men to be hanged, drawn, and quartered was the medieval Scottish resistance leader, Sir William Wallace. His quartered limbs were sent to Newcastle, Berwick, Stirling, and Perth to serve as a warning whilst his head was set on London Bridge. Thank you for watching. Till next time.